Closing bell, we are ringing in 5 minutes, and we do have all green on the screen. So maybe investors have gotten a little less tentative with the last few minutes before we hear the closing bell ring. New high for the Dow is a gain of 93, but we're just up 68 right now. Okay, Costco hiking its dividend by 8% because people are going there in droves. They need Costco to be open. Sales have risen dramatically, with consumers flocking to their store shelves to stock up amid the COVID-19 crisis. And as you look at shares right now, that's a good enough for a gain of 4%. Costco stands at $322.44 a share. All right, let us now go to Cheryl Casoni, I'm guessing. Yep, Cheryl Casoni in the newsroom, and she's got the very latest on, I guess, Costco and more. I mean, this is good news, at least, when you see a stock surging today like that.
Yeah, we've got Bed Bath & Beyond. I want to take a look at the stock right now. Take a look at this, Lizzie. Up 18%. Earnings coming in better than expected. They earned 38 cents a share, but that was a 68% decline from the same quarter a year ago. Above what the street expected. Mixed bag for these guys, though. The CEO, Mark Triton, acknowledged the quarter ended about 2 weeks before the country began in earnest to shut down. So this doesn't really reflect what's happening now for the company, but they said current conditions are tough. Overall sales have been down 42% in the last few weeks. They told analysts sales have nearly doubled since the shutdown began. Guess what? Consumers, Lizzie, are buying bread making machines, coffee makers, vacuum cleaners. Back to you. I know you're not surprised.
You know what I just ordered? I just ordered from Bed Bath & Beyond 3 SodaStream cartridges.
Ooh,
I'm still waiting. A couple of days ago, but I need that. Yeah, I make my own little sparkling water. Cheryl, good to see you. Gold hitting 7-year highs this week. And as we look at gold, it does stand at $1,735 per troy ounce. But there's now a call for gold passing $2,000 a troy ounce, and that it will stay there for the next 5 years. Now, take this with a grain of salt because it's coming from the gold mining company Newmont CEO Tom Palmer. He thinks so. Is he talking his book a little bit? Well, his stock is up 3% right now. But my next guest, we thought, let's bring in Ed Coyne because he runs Sprott Asset Management, and gold, he said, needs to hit $1,800 first. Okay, but when is that going to happen, Ed?
Well, we've seen the last we've seen the last couple of weeks gold really continue to get a bid, and I always like to remind people that really since the Fed tried to tighten back in 2015, gold has been marching forward quite nicely, and it's not because they anticipated COVID-19 happening. It's that we've had too much debt on the balance sheet, we've had interest rates lower for longer, and we think that's going to continue in droves now that we're at QE infinity. And so I think 2,000 is very reachable, but I think you have to look at it from a stair-step standpoint and say 1,800 first, 1,850 and so forth. We're only about 10% away from an all-time new high.
Ed, you gotta run. Sorry to cut you off. We have green on the screen. That'll do it for the Clayman Countdown. Thank you so much for joining us. After the bell starts right now.
Yeah, pretty good finish for stocks after bouncing around for most of the day today. President Trump, meantime, is just wrapping up a meeting with the nation's governors, talking about some guidelines for getting America back to work. So we'll talk about that. Good to be with you. I'm Connell McShane.
I'm Melissa Francis. This is After the Bell. The major averages ending near session highs as we wait for the president to unveil his plan to reopen the economy. Hooray! Fox Business team coverage. Lauren Simonetti is watching the markets. Blake Berman has the latest from the White House, and Hillary Vaughn is in Washington. Blake, we kick it off with you.
Melissa, Connell, we saw the final wind-up heading into the president's announcement, 6 o'clock on the East Coast, when the president will unveil the latest guidelines going forward. Earlier today, he spoke with a bipartisan group from the House and from the Senate, a couple different phone calls there. Right now, we believe he is still on that phone call with the nation's governors before he unveils the next steps later this afternoon. We are getting a little bit of the themes from the White House as to what we can expect when the president takes to the microphone a couple hours from now. They say these new guidelines will be layered, no more blanket approaches for the entire country, and it will be governor-led. The White House said the guidelines that we will soon get will address the nation state by state, county by county, and they will talk about restaurants, bars, and other public venues as well, plus sporting events. Here was the president just a little while ago before he hopped on that phone call with the governors.
going to be talking about guidelines that have been very carefully done. We'll be informing them, and I think they'll be very happy with what we're doing. They want to win this war. We're going to win it. We're going to win it very, very big, and hopefully very soon.
Bottom line here with the president, he wants to reopen parts of the country. The White House says that his two top medical experts, Dr. Anthony Fauci and Dr. Deborah Birx, have signed off, along with Dr. Robert Redfield of the CDC, have all signed off on the guidelines here. There have been questions about what metrics the president would use to make this decision. As when he was asked about that, he pointed to his head a few days ago and said those were the metrics. The White House says that data is driving this decision. We'll hear from the president later this afternoon. Back to you.
Blake, thank you for that. As the White House begins to look at options to get Americans back to work, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is extending the state's stay-at-home order. Take a listen.
The New York pause policies, the close down policies, will be extended in coordination with other states to May 15th.
A little bit closer. Here now to react is Steve Moore, who is advising the White House on how to reopen the economy. Steve, are we there yet? I think everyone's asking the same question. How much longer do we have to wait? What's the criteria?
Yeah, hi, Melissa. I actually think that you're going to start to see a few states open up as soon as next week. If not next week, certainly the week after. And I was on the phone this morning with some of the legislators in the state of Arizona. Keep an eye on that state. It may be one of the states that leads us out of this. And I think you're going to see a lot of the western states start to reopen on a rolling basis in certain counties where you don't have many cases of coronavirus. And then I think you just create a kind of momentum. And obviously, you know, one of the things the president keeps saying, and he said it in our meeting yesterday, our closed meeting, is you got to use the best public health measures, the greatest care to keep in place the public safety and keep that foremost. But there's so many counties in the United States right now, Melissa, that could be open because there's just not a lot of infections. And so that's, I think, how it will work.
Okay, so one thing that we've heard so far is that it's going to be governor-led. I don't know if you've heard in New York, there's a little disagreement. You have Governor Cuomo saying that we're going to be, staying in place until May 15th, which if that isn't bad enough, then there was Mayor de Blasio on just in the last hour on Fox News Channel saying that he doesn't plan on opening up New York beaches in a lot of New York all the way through the summer, that we could be stuck like this until the fall. What's going to happen in a situation like that where there's such disagreement between mayors and governors?
Well, that's actually for the state of New York to decide, right? That's a battle between two politicians in New York. I want to go back to something, though, that's really important, Melissa. We got these dreadful numbers today that you've been reporting on Fox Business News about what's happened with the employment situation. And we now have, 22 million people or so that have lost their jobs in the last 3 or 4 weeks. I never thought I would see that in my lifetime. And I think that has been a wake-up call to a lot of the skeptics who say we just have to keep the economy shut down. I live in Virginia, where our governor, not a very smart governor, but he's decided he wants to keep the economy in Virginia closed down till the middle of June. The problem with that, Melissa, I'm not a public health expert, but I'm an economist. I guarantee you, if you keep a state's economy shut down through the middle of June or the late June, it's going to be very hard to rebuild that state. You're going to have so many businesses in collapse, your restaurants, your pubs, your bars, your small stores, your retail sector, your shopping centers will be just destroyed. So that just doesn't work. And that's why I think Trump is exactly right. You got to calibrate, the economics and the health, and they're not mutually exclusive. We can do this in a way that protects life, protects health, but also gets people on the job. I mean, we can't go to 35 million people unemployed in this country. It's unthinkable.
I know, Steve, but I have my suspicions about what's going on in New York. I mean, for example, if you look at our mayors, so the city of New York was already really struggling because of tax policy, because of a lot of different things. We had many empty storefronts here in the city. I wonder about our mayor's motives when he talks about leaving things closed for even longer than what public health officials are saying, for even longer than what the governor is saying. I'm wondering, do you want to cover up some of the city's economic woes, in a way where you then blame them on the coronavirus? I mean, as they come and they ask the feds for help, is somebody going to be looking at sort of the accounting in the states as they come and beg for money after, you know, how they've left these cities? What are your thoughts?
So it's a pretty stupid strategy to keep your economy shut down so that you can hide the problems of your economy, right? And I'm not arguing with you. You're right that New York has a lot of problems. I mean, I laugh when I hear people say this little boomlet for Andrew Cuomo. He has the worst economy of the 50 states, virtually. Why would we want to put him in charge of the national economy? I think what you're going to see, Melissa, over the course of the next month or two is a real red state, blue state divide in terms of how they handle this. The red states, I'm pretty sure, are going to open up a lot quicker than the blue states, and there's going to be a lot of pressure then on these blue states to follow suit. One last point, if I may. I know what Mayor de Blasio is thinking. I know what Governor Cuomo is thinking. I know what Governor Murphy is thinking, and my home state governor, J.P. Pritzker. They all think Uncle Sam is going to send them, you know, billions and billions and hundreds of billions of dollars, and that ain't happening. I know that the Congress, especially the Republicans, are saying, especially the red state, why should a state like Utah and Idaho or Tennessee that's fiscally sound have to send all this money to New York and California and New Jersey? So they have to get their fiscal house in order now and not depend on a big check from Uncle Sam, because it ain't coming.
Well, we'll see. Yeah. Steve
I
Moore,
hope it's
thank
not
you so
coming.
much. We appreciate it. We can't get...
Thank you,
yeah,
Melissa.
right. I was going to say that, although I'm here in New York, so we'll see. All right, Connell.
Well, let's see, you know, Steve was talking about some of the economic data, and he's right, it was dreadful in that we found out about 22 million people filed for unemployment benefits just in the past 4 weeks. The most recent figures out this morning. Lauren Simonetti tracking that and the market's reaction to that. Lauren.
Yeah, that was bad news, but I gotta say, stocks traded in a relatively narrow range despite that bad news. This is where we ended up. The Dow was up 33 points, about a 400-point range from high to low. It finished about 60 points from the high of the session. The Nasdaq gaining, this was the big winner, 139 points, about 30 points from its high. S&P up 16. So as you noted, Connell, another 5.25 million Americans filed for those jobless benefits last week. That brings the total over the past month to 22 million American workers out of work. The worry is that's going to push the unemployment rate to the highest since the Great Depression. And the lingering question is, how many of these workers will be rehired when the economy does open back up? It wasn't all bad news today. Consumer, healthcare, tech stocks, including Amazon, Netflix, and Microsoft, led the Nasdaq. Take a look at Netflix as well as Amazon hitting new record highs again. They've been popular stay-at-home stocks, but this is interesting. Netflix finishing the day with a market cap greater than Disney's and greater than Comcast, meaning that Netflix is now the most highly valued entertainment company in the country. A slew of brokerages raising their price target on the stock today. Goldman giving it a $490 a share target. It closed at $439 today. So, Kamala and Melissa, wasn't the worst news. We did have some green on the screen after all. Back to you.
Yeah, a little bit. All right, thank you, Lauren. Melissa.
The lending program aimed to help small businesses has now run out of money. Lawmakers now trying to work out a deal for new funding. Hillary Vaughn is in D.C. with more. Hillary.
Melissa, well, the money for the Paycheck Protection Program has dried up, and Senate Republicans are getting fed up with Democrats who are stalling their requests to add more money to the program. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell saying on the Senate floor today that they have asked repeatedly for more money, but Democrats have rejected that. The Small Business Administration burned through $350 billion in just 2 weeks, and now applications are closed until Congress can add more money to their budget. They processed over 14 years worth of loans in 14 days, processing over 1.6 million applications from over 5,000 different lenders. The president today asking Congress again to add the $250 billion in additional funds he's been requesting for weeks.
Our Paycheck Protection Program, which is a tremendous success. In fact, it is now depleted. $350 billion is now depleted, and we're going for another $250 billion. They want it, they have to have it.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she will not sign off on any more relief money for the PPP until she gets more money for hospitals and state and local governments. Pelosi had a meeting with Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin last night to hammer out a deal. She has another meeting with him this afternoon. She says she hopes that they can offer her some type of compromise that she says her party can accept.
They need the money. We understand that, and we're willing to give them that money. But we also need the other money. And the question is not why are we not just saying, let's just do that and forget about hospital, state, and local.
And Pelosi is losing some in her own caucus, Melissa. Two Senate Democrats, Kyrsten Sinema and Tina Smith, both have said, let's get through this stalemate. Let's just approve this additional money for the Paycheck Protection Program. So we'll see if Pelosi is inspired to try to come up with some sort of deal soon. Melissa?
Yeah, more money, more money, more money. Hillary, thank you. Connell.
All right, let's go to Mark Cuban on this for a moment, the billionaire entrepreneur. He says the high number of jobless claims that we've seen here over the last few weeks, to him it shows that the government stimulus, especially the Paycheck Protection Program for small business, that it's essentially been too little, too late.
Brutal. I mean, there's no other way to look at it. It's painful. It also is kind of an indication, particularly given that a lot of these jobs are probably disproportionately small companies. It means the stimulus didn't get to small businesses in time. And so that's going to be a never-ending challenge.
Bring our friend Scott Martin in to talk more about this from Kingsview Asset Management. He's a Fox contributor. And we've actually, on this show, we've talked a lot about this, Scott. What Cuban is getting at is that, well-intended as it may have been, this Paycheck Protection Program, first it took a while to get passed and then a while to roll it out and actually get implemented and get the money in people's hands. In the meantime, we got, 22 million people filing for unemployment.
Yeah, this was a tough one to land. I mean, the reality is, Connell, like you said, there was a lot of hair on this from the beginning, whether if you want to talk about the slowdowns in Congress, from Pelosi and crew adding a lot of pork to the bill, to the fact that they probably did underestimate the demand. Communication, don't forget, about a month or so ago was kind of choppy with respect to what businesses had to do to qualify. But, I look at these reactions and I think I try to look at the bright side, as I do. And this probably means, number one, we're on the happy side of par here because we're already quarterbacking what's happened because it is kind of working. And number two, the standpoint that something is being done and there's more money hopefully coming per Hillary Vaughn's report. So the reality is this: if we're left quarterbacking, Monday morning quarterbacking, with hopefully the NFL here starting soon, at least in the fall, and getting the NFL draft here done, my mind is on sports and coming back. If we're Monday morning quarterbacking what Trump's done so far in his messaging, that's probably a good sign that we're closer to the end of this thing than the beginning.
Here's the problem with that theory, at least on the Paycheck Protection Program, is that the next date I'd be hearing a lot from small businesses is the end of June, like June 30th. And they're looking at it as, say, they take these loans with the agreement that they'll keep people on the payroll, right? And then that loan will be forgiven. It'll essentially turn into a grant. And that basically gets you to the end of June. So now we have all of these delays in terms of how our economy is going to reopen. New York going to May 15th, and who knows, maybe delayed more after that. What if the economic demand isn't there, by the 1st of July, say? Now you're thinking about more layoffs if you're running one of these small businesses. You don't have that money anymore. We're going to reach a point where that's a tough call.
Yeah, those are the real layoffs, really, as I would say, Connell. And I think about the end of June very close to my heart, because my birthday, by the way, is June 28th, just for those playing at home. So those are big dates in the world in general, right? But you're right, Connell, the fallout economically is one that's going to be hard to determine, because I agree with what you've been talking about so far on the show, especially with Steve Moore, is you can throw money at this thing all day long. But the reality is you need economic confidence to come back. You need the consumers to feel comfortable with going out and spending money and
Right.
sitting in restaurants and going to concerts. And if that doesn't happen, then it doesn't matter how much money you throw at it, because it's going to keep having to be an endless amount, because there's going to keep being problems in the economy with confidence.
That is a good final point to end on, Scott, because you're right in that sometimes we talk about, whose decision is it? Is it President Trump? Is it the governors? Is it the mayors? But at the end of the day, I get it's ours, right? In a lot of ways.
It is.
To your point, are we going to choose to go to a restaurant? Are we going to? There's a lot of individual, I don't know if responsibility is the right word, but choice, and the choice we make will determine our economic kind of fate, right?
True, and here's the great part of that too. I'm feeling very optimistic today, guys. the consumer is going to make the right choice, though, because people are already taking precautions. They're wearing masks, they're social distancing, they're washing their hands. I mean, all these things are happening to make people safer. We're seeing that in the flattening of the curve. The thing that's worrisome to me that Steve maybe mentioned that I think is a little bit incorrect about, the governors here, especially J.B. Pritzker, my governor, he's not waiting for a check from Uncle Sam. He's waiting for a check from taxpayers, people that are still making money in this state, businesses that are still open, they're still getting revenue. That's what they're waiting for the check for, and that's going to hurt business and hurt the economy as well when that comes to roost.
Right, and remember they're waiting for a lot of these tax receipts or these checks to come in until the 15th of July, not to, yesterday, 15th of April, because of that little change this year. All right, good stuff as always, Scott. It's good to see you. Scott Martin in Chicago. Melissa.
More than 2.1 million cases worldwide and almost 650,000 right here in the U.S. 14 states now have more than 10,000 confirmed cases as local leaders fight to curb the outbreak. We will have the latest on the pandemic this hour, plus businesses fighting back, how Amazon is stepping up to test all of its employees for the virus, and if other companies should follow their lead, and tracking the origin of COVID-19. We're going to talk to one expert about his research on China and reports that this virus was accidentally let loose from a Wuhan lab. Stick around.
When they provided disincentives for people to go back to work once it is safe.
What I wonder about is, we'll eventually get to the point, Governor, that this will end, hopefully, prayerfully, without any spike in cases, et cetera. But it will be slow, right? I mean, a lot of these states are going to maintain distancing measures and the like. But, you're from in Wisconsin, a lot of buildings and workplaces that are very, very crowded, people are packed close together. And I'm wondering if as many people come back to work, even when they're allowed to come back to work, because they're going to have to be spread out.
Well, a couple of things. Again, you got to have a game plan. Today, unfortunately, the new governor here extended the stay-at-home order to almost the end of May, so almost a month and a half from now. To me, we should look at the next 2 weeks. Our peak in Wisconsin was weeks ago, the beginning of April, was 198 new cases that day. The average this week's been about 127, according to data from the Wisconsin Hospital Station. We're not out of the woods yet, but we need to look at the data. My hope is that we'll continue to get better over the next few weeks and then have a game plan. I don't think you just open it up all at once. Maybe some of the viewers don't remember this, but I remember years ago when I was a kid playing sports, if the lights went off at the stadium, you turned them on. It took a while to come back on. That's what the economy is going to be like. There's going to have to be a phase in. I think we start with manufacturing and the trades. Those areas where you physically have to be there and where you can spread people out. You can close down break rooms and lunch rooms and keep people at their actual machinery, at their site. You can do other things to make sure people aren't huddled together and keep those offices where there are cubicles and administrative duties going on, keep them at home longer. There's a logical way to do this, but we've got to have a game plan. Most leaders, most governors and mayors aren't talking about that around the country. We need to have a game plan, and we need to be doing it now, not waiting until whatever day is the artificial endpoint, and then waking up and wondering why the economy doesn't come back. And as I mentioned, we also got to do it. Lindsey Graham and Tim Scott laid this out weeks ago. We've got to fix unemployment. I think there's a way that you can encourage people to go back to work, keep them whole for the higher amount they're getting. A guy making $10 an hour right now under the new system here in Wisconsin, he would be making $400 a week if he was working. He's going to make about $800, a little bit over $800 with this new federal enhanced benefit. I say let him go back to work when it's safe, but do so in a way that puts an incentive on going back to work and doesn't provide a disincentive for work along the way. We got to handle those things now and not wake up weeks from now and try and fix them.
We shall see. Governor, thank you very much for taking the time. By the way, to the governor's point here, this is a global issue, folks. The United Kingdom, they're going to keep their very strict measures in effect for at least another few weeks. Germany, that has had a big improvement and a swing in things, back to business as usual, or close to it come next week. Kids go back to school the week after that. It's different strokes for different folks, no matter where you live on Mother Earth.